Hey, habit thrivers. If you're ready to rock your next chapter, this is your place. It's time to live your most fit, fearless, and fabulous life. I believe that our daily habits and routines set the foundation for achieving our dream lives and help us find more passion and clarity with less doubt and uncertainty. So let's get cozy. Grab your planner and your favorite beverage and come along with me on this journey of reclaiming your passions and finding new ones along the way. Welcome to the Habit Thrive podcast, a podcast for women in their me now years. Hi, I'm Lori, your host, and each week we come together to create habits, routines, and rituals to regain our power and our awesomeness to live our best chapters yet. Happy time change. Today, in episode 142 of the Habit Thrive podcast, springing forward, how to harness the time change to reset your habits and wellness routines, we're talking about how you can use the time change as a natural jumping off point for March in itself and for March spring planning and habit shifts. So as we move into the longer days and we're feeling the shifting energy, it's a perfect opportunity to refresh routines, set new intentions, and align our habits with the season ahead. So whether you're feeling energized by the extra daylight. Now, you might be listening to this on Saturday, so it won't be until tomorrow on Sunday that you start to notice this. But noticing if you are feeling, again, that extra energy, or you're struggling with the adjustment. This episode will guide you in making the most of this transition. And if you're listening to this episode at a different time of the year, know that the tips and strategies that are being shared in this episode work during any shift in your life. That could be travel, that could be illness, that could be moving, any change to your schedule that you're feeling like you need to come back to the stability of your habits and routines. By the end of this episode today, you'll have some very practical strategies to manage your next week, and for some of you, the next 2 weeks. Honestly, my hope and dream for this time change is that Jammers, my Terry Poo, gets back on track and sleeps until 5 a.m. again, instead of getting up at 4, which she has been doing, no word of a lie, since the fall time change. So if you can all send your positive energy my way and Jammer's way that she gets back on track, that would be wonderful. So before we dive into today's episode in terms of the specific strategies, I just wanted to share a couple of interesting tidbits because you are listening to this podcast because you are as obsessed with habits and routines as I am. So my question very often is like, why? Why is there a time change? And it's really interesting, again, from a habit and routine perspective. So daylight savings time dates back to the early 1900s and was originally introduced to make better use of daylight hours in the summer months, to reduce energy consumption. So coal, for example, way back in World War I, and overall just to boost productivity by aligning our waking hours with daylight. But this need no longer exists. Yet, we keep observing daylight savings time, making the switch twice a year, without the actual original reason still existing. Now, in Canada, not every province does this switching back and forth. Saskatchewan, for example, stays put. And I would often share, and I think I've probably shared on another podcast episode, that it was all about the cows. Now, it's not just about the cows, but it's how I remember that Saskatchewan doesn't do the switching back and forth. Now, it's definitely in terms of agriculture, though, and back in 1966, they decided, it seems a little ridiculous to be going back and forth on this, so we're going to stay put. So there are other areas in British Columbia and Yukon, actually, in 2020, decided that they were staying with daylight savings time, not switching back and forth. And so, again, it just makes you pause for a moment and think, why are we still doing this? Now, there has been back and forth. It kind of comes into the news for a little bit and then goes away. But it is, again, really interesting to know the history and to think about that. And in relationship, even to our habits and routines and how we move through our phases of life, and particularly as we come into our retirement years, that's come up again with friends and family and clients who realize that they're doing things in their day that they don't have to actually be doing them at that particular time because they're not working anymore. That could be when they're getting up in the morning, when they're going to bed at night, when they're exercising, right? I have people say, well, I don't have to, go to this class at 7:00 at night anymore. I can start doing your classes during the day. But it takes a little while to do that shift. It takes a little while to actually notice that the habits and routines that you are doing were based on the fact that you had a very structured day around your work. And for some people, the first thing that they've done, and I love speaking with people who are going through their first year of retirement, and those of you who have been retired for a little bit, and I'm the semi-retired is how I like to put it, but the habits and routines are so interesting. Some people have said, okay, well, I can stay, I don't have to go to bed at this particular time. I don't have to get up at this particular time. But once they stay up a little while, for example, to read a book a little bit longer or to watch a Netflix series and realize that all of a sudden their whole sleep has shifted, and then they're not sure when they're hungry. They're not sure when they're going to do their exercising, and really making that discovery that the importance of what time we go to bed at night and the morning routine. It really bookends our body's clock. But it's all good to explore, right? So whether we're on holidays or whether we're going through different stages and phases of our lives, we really notice what are our anchors, what are our keystone anchors in our day. And that always stands out. So you may not have the original reason, let's say something of having work to do a particular habit in your day, but after assessing, you might decide, actually, this timing really works, or this timing doesn't work. I'm going to go to a yoga class in the middle of the day now, or, mid-morning instead of waiting till the evening. But until we notice that, we just kind of keep going along. And this is part of listening and getting ideas as you listen not to just my podcast, but different podcasts as well. The other thing to think about as we move through this time change is, why is it more challenging for some people compared to others? I'm going to divide this into two answers. One is, yes, I have to say our age, or this chapter of our lives. And I'm going to speak to our constitution. And in Ayurveda, it is our dosha. So these 2 points really stand out for me in terms of how we are navigating the time change. In terms of our age, as we age, and I'm still looking for another term, right? As we progress through our wisdom years, our me now years, consistency does seem to become more important. So routines and consistency help us maintain our physical and mental well-being. So any disruption, such as a time change, travel, illness, as I talked about, that throws us off our meal schedule, our exercise routines, our medication timing, that's really important. And it's not just medications, it's also supplements. So when you are taking a particular medication, vitamin, a supplement, it is affected by what you're eating. For some of you, it's being affected by your exercise. And so once we have that 1 hour shift, for some of you, depending on your medication, your supplement, you're going to notice that more. This is why I'm always saying around our time change to be as vigilant as we can around our daily schedule. So it does require a little bit more of a conscious effort. But when you look at the container of this, if you say, I'm really going to hone in on the timing of everything now for the next week or for the next 2 weeks, it really gives you a chance to notice how important timing is. And that's a big part of Ayurveda. Yes, the type of supplements we take, how we're exercising and what we're doing while we're exercising and what we're eating, super, super important. But the timing is, again, the keystone anchor of everything else that goes on in our day. I like to say, once we get our timing, once we get our rhythm, then we just fill in the gaps. We fill in the stuff that just makes our day flow even that much more. So as we age, yes, consistency, we get a little bit more attached to our habits and routines for sure. And sometimes people will joke about it and a little negative about it, right? We can't eat past 5 o'clock or have to make sure we're in bed by this particular time and I used to, kind of, right. I mean, I want to be flexible as well. And I think we need the flexibility in there. But the reason that I am such a fan of habits and routines and rituals is because of the consistency and is because I feel better. And so a little bit, being off now and again is fine. And actually what it does is it teaches me how important my consistency is. So what also happens as we age is that our melatonin levels naturally drop. So this makes sleep regulation a little bit harder for sure. But as I've spoken about in other episodes, is that when you read blog posts or listen to other podcast episodes, or even there are, it's covered on television in the daily news, that as we age, our sleep becomes more difficult, doesn't have that quality. There are still things that we can do around it. So if we know that our melatonin is dropping as we age, well, there are ways for us to enhance our melatonin. One of them that I'm going to speak to a couple of times in this episode is the importance of being outside and having not just sunlight, but just daylight on our face, on our body, on our eyes, to make sure that serotonin-melatonin relationship, serotonin being the feel-good neurotransmitter that is pumping out during the day. So when that is being tended to, then our melatonin is much happier and our melatonin levels will go up in the evening. Now, for sure, you can chat, with your doctor, your pharmacist around other ways to enhance your melatonin. But there are, again, just simple things to do on a daily basis to increase that melatonin, instead of just saying, well, my melatonin is dropping, so I'm not going to sleep very well. The other thing is that our circadian rhythms shift naturally. So as we age, we tend to wake up a little earlier, feel like we want to go to sleep a little earlier. But again, I don't think that is across the board. I think when we start to pay attention to our sleep and when we get in our rhythm, we can start to figure out, when do we want to go to bed? When do we want to get up? And start to structure our day around doing that. But realizing that, it perhaps is going to be a little more challenging because, again, what is out there in the sleep world is that sleep quality declines. So really noticing when there is a disruption, that if your sleep is already challenging, when you add a time change in there, it potentially can become more challenging. But again, I'm going to be optimistic and say it is the ideal time to be honing in on your evening ritual and your morning routine. It is a perfect pause as we move into March to say, okay, well, I'm going to focus in here on my sleep. If we're constantly reading and hearing that our sleep gets worse as we age, guess what? Our sleep gets worse as we age. But there are still things that we can do that perhaps make our sleep better this year than it was last year. Make our sleep better this year than it was when we were in our 30s. Like, the potential is there. And the importance, though, of awareness, of keeping track, of exploring. And I'm not here to tell you it is simple. It's not. I sometimes say, and I have actually a journal, and I just put a sleep checklist into my winter journal that you can complete every single week, because I'm going to say sometimes honing in on your sleep ends up becoming like a course, like a college course, and you're going to just kind of hone in on that. And the perfect time to be doing this is actually when we are transitioning. So just like you are checking in with your alarms, your fire detectors, you're changing the batteries or things that you are doing around these time changes, that you're thinking about that as well. This is a perfect opportunity. Now, when you think about it, again, related to age as well, this is why, kids and younger adults, like I could probably ask my kids next week, so how's the time change going? Like, what time change, Mom? Like, seriously. They often don't even notice. And I think that's also because everything changes now for them, right? So their phones and their iPads and computers, everything is changing. Now, for those of you listening to me, right, if we're all in that kind of same demographic, we're running around changing all the clocks in our house, the stove, we're changing the coffee maker, and some of you are changing or we're changing the clock in your vehicle. Some of you, I'm not saying myself, maybe just once, have left the clock vehicle from one change to the next, just knowing that it's going to catch up. So I'm just saying. But what happens again during that time is we were just constantly reminded that we were in a time change. And so for the kids now, I think that's actually a positive. They just kind of keep moving on, keep doing what they're doing. And again, it's just really interesting to kind of ponder that. So that's number one. Why do some people find it more challenging than others in terms of the time change? The other is our dosha, whether you are vata, pitta, or kapha. Okay, so you can search up a dosha quiz, DOSHA. It will also be in the show notes here. So if you want to, I like to check in on my dosha because they shift around. Our numbers shift around season to season. So I do love to check in on a seasonal change to see where I am. For all of us right now, as we're moving into March and moving into the spring, we're moving into the kapha season. So it's wet, it's heavier, it's still cool. And even here in our community, in yesterday, for example, we're just sloshing around in slush, and your walk. Someone mentioned one of my clients, her snowshoe was just like crazy. Heart rate up for sure. So there's some positive, but only able to do a short snowshoe. So that is kapha season. That is when we're coming into the spring. So when we're coming into the spring and we're coming into a time change, or we're in a time change, right? We've got two changes that are happening. So for those of you who are vata, which is air and ether, you are most sensitive to change. And I have a lot of vata. I have more pitta in me than I knew before I did my Ayurvedic year-long course. Now I know I'm also quite a pitta, but vata is still my dominant dosha. So I'm very sensitive to change. And so if you're a vata, you thrive on stability, on structured routines. And so a time change can lead to sleep disturbances for sure, fatigue, anxiety, food cravings. Again, we don't know if we're tired. We don't know if we're hungry. And I'm going to say vatas, allow yourself a good 2 weeks. Self-compassion, self-care, allow yourself a good 2 weeks. Now, what I've noticed over the years is when I've been practicing and understanding as I come into the time change that this is what happens, it's actually very often doesn't take me now 2 weeks, but I still allow for the 2 weeks to get used to the time change. So how to adapt for vata is definitely, right, bookend those days with the regular letting go into sleep and getting up, grounding foods. So even though we're coming into the kapha season, it's still cool. So I'm still looking for warm foods and nourishing foods. I'm still with my oatmeal, root vegetables. I love my ghee, stews, all of that, which are going to be a little bit heavy as we move through April, May into June. We're definitely lightening up. But vata, you're still looking for those grounding foods, especially during a time change. And definitely avoiding screens and overstimulation of any type, overstimulation of exercise, of discussion, of television, of social media before bed. Important for everyone. Super important in the time change for vata. And I love my oil massage. So Abhyanga, is self-massage in Ayurveda. I use oil every single day. I love it. It's grounding. I don't even think I could probably start my day without having some type of oil on my body. But Abhyanga is a longer self-massage that I like to do on the weekend with warm oil. So warm sesame oil or almond oil. It is a longer process. There is some really nice nurturing and resting in that, and super important during this time change. So from here, that goes along actually with staying warm, because we're talking warm massage oil, warm sesame oil as you're doing your Abhyanga. Good for everybody, good for the Pitta, right? Good for the Kapha, but most important for the Vata, and actually helps us transition this time change. Now, if you are a Pitta dosha, you are governed by fire and water. And again, I have more Pitta than I knew. Now, having gone through this course, also doing these questionnaires on a seasonal basis, I realized that I have definitely some Pitta. So the challenge is for you, if you're a Pitta, it's not so much that you have trouble with change, because out of the three doshas, you can actually handle change the most. Now, you do get irritated and impatient with others who are not managing the change as well, which is really interesting, right? And when you recognize that, because you could be living with a Vata, your partner could be a Vata, right? Your kids, and you're like, okay, people, like, get on with it, right? So we tend to get a little impatient. And the other thing is that we recognize, and when I say we, this is not me actually, but if you are pure Pitta, you actually look at that 1 hour and you go, excellent. I've got another hour in my day to get stuff done, right? So I'm going to get my stuff done in the evening. I'm going to go out for a run at night. I've got this energy. And what happens with Pitta is that Pittas tend to overschedule. They get overstimulated. They're super motivated, and then they burn out. And so paying particular attention to your Pitta personality during the time change. You still need to let go and cool down in the evenings, right? Avoiding overstimulation, late night work. You're still practicing some breathing, some relaxation, listening to like Insight Timer, listening to anything that just allows you to let go into the evening. You're eating actually cooling foods, which is interesting. So the leafy greens and the sweet fruits, and just staying cool, even as we're in the Kapha season. But this is, again, in particular to the time change. So maintaining your hydration, drinking that coconut water or herbal teas, being careful with the caffeine, because you can get overstimulated, and you're overstimulated and you're like, I got another hour in the day. I've got more daylight. I'm going. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this is not good. I just find it so fun to recognize this. So if this is speaking to you at all in your Pitta world, then again, just to notice and play with this. So now, if you filled out the questionnaire, or you know that you are Kapha, it's Kapha season. So you got a double kind of, we're moving from Vata into Kapha. So we're early spring here. So it's earth and water. And feeling that heaviness, not every day in Northern Ontario here. Sometimes it's still cold and icy, but we have that heaviness. So Kaphas struggle with feeling sluggish in general. Slow to adjust. Okay, so this time changes. Yeah, I know there's a time change. It's going to take me a little while. So it might take Kaphas a couple of weeks to adjust. Feel a little heavier, lethargic, and unmotivated during a transition. They are not Pittas. They're not like, bring it on. It's really hard for Kaphas to wake up in the morning in general compared to the Pittas and the Vatas. So this is a little bit of a transition. So mornings are a little bit more challenging. It is the time for Kapha to start to move towards lighter, still warm foods because it's cool, but kind of lighter foods. So moving away from the heavy soups and the heavy dairy and things that feel heavy and wet and sluggish. So definitely still trying to wake up early. You're trying to get up around that 6 o'clock. You're actually not wanting to sleep past sunrise. So it becomes interesting as you navigate the time change. Increasing movement in the morning is super helpful for everybody, but definitely kapha in general. So you want to get up, do a little bit of yoga, maybe not a super crazy dance party, but like a little kind of jazz dance party to get rocking and rolling. And this is going to help you transition. But recognize you're kapha. It's going to take you a little bit longer to transition, to move. So it's all about self-compassion. And again, I just find it really curious and I find it lots of fun, especially when you have a kapha, vata, and sometimes a kapha, vata, and pitta who are in the same household. So super fun. I'm just going to throw this out here as well. I'm not coming at you with any research around it, but I do find sometimes that men find it a little easier to adapt, in my life anyways, to the time change compared to women. I think in general, especially moving into these wisdom years, we're just a little bit more connected to some things. It does come from our cycles. I'm going to say that for sure. It is definitely hormonal. It is the connection to the moon. It is the connection to the earth. It is all of that. Now, am I coming at you with any, research that I'm going to source at the bottom of this episode? Nope, this is anecdotal. It is what I've noticed, and I think it's okay. I think it's actually fantastic. As we age, we become more intuitive, we become more intentional. We have the potential anyways to be able to notice that. We get a little more in tune with nature. And this is all very, very positive. And so using all of this to our advantage. And again, you might have some males in your life saying, what time change? It's all good. So how long does it take us to adjust though? On average, research says 3 to 7 days for the body to fully adjust to a time change. However, some people will take up to 2 weeks. This is the grace I want you to give yourself. I want you to notice time change to time change when you put some of these strategies in. Is there a difference? So it does depend again on how fast you readjust your sleep routine, right? That you manage the light exposure, getting your eyes out in the daylight as much as you can to set that serotonin melatonin connection, and just overall your health and stress levels as you're managing this. So what are the top ways to manage a time change? I'm actually going to give you 5 because I love numbers too. Number 1, at night, you might just be looking at shifting your time a little bit. Notice 10 to 15 minutes in the evening. So if you're going to bed and you're like, I am not tired, right? This is not working for me. Have something in place like a meditation, like a breathing practice, and know that even your shutdown ritual, even if your eyes are not closed, even if you're not literally right in bed, that starting to relax and start that shift is helpful. It's all part of letting go to sleep. Doesn't mean that you're in bed, head on the pillow. You start to do that shifting down. For me, it's a couple of hours before I'm literally in bed with my head on the pillow. Okay, on those nights that I'm able to do that. Number 2, get that natural morning light. Step outside within 30 minutes of waking to help reset your body clock. So this morning, stepped outside, pure ice. So safety first, number 1. But oh my gosh, in the last couple of days, stepping outside, we had the most beautiful snow that was just like glued on to the branches. It was magnificent. I paused there. I was breathing. I was taking that all in. Holy habit stacking, right? Gratitude and awe and breath work and getting the, not the sunlight, just getting the daylight on my face. This is a non-negotiable for me. It is a little easier perhaps for those of you who have dogs that you're letting them out already. Now, for us, it was before the light came up, but you're going to be letting them out as well. every opportunity that you have that you're letting your dog out, take a moment and let that light be on your face, on your body, on your hands. And then the more you get out during the day, the more resetting that you're doing. So if you're able to get out at lunchtime, if you're able to go out again at 3 or 4 o'clock, all of those opportunities to reset. Now, the cool thing right now, again, with the light, is that you're going to shift perhaps your exercise a little bit. Again, that's a natural shift. As we move into the spring, we have more light. We might be coming back to our evening walk. So just being really open and optimistic around this, but really, really connecting to outside. Number 3 is limiting the evening screen time. For me, that shut down for emails, for messages, for social media is 8 o'clock. I have been working towards this for a couple of years. It's finally not 100%, but it's pretty darn close that shutdown is 8 o'clock. In hopefully eyes closed and sleeping by 9:30. So does that mean that I am not watching television between 8 and 9:30? Full disclosure, I like to watch TV, not news, not a crazy crime show or anything, not Netflix. Oh my gosh, not Netflix. That would do me in. I reserve, and this is again just personal, Amazon Prime, Netflix, whatever you got going on. Reserve that for the weekend. So it's an extra treat, and I'm able to consume at the most, though, this is interesting, at the most 3 episodes top, usually 2 episodes. If I did that during the week, oh my gosh, I'd be toast. So screen time, but just something really light. I've talked about Seinfeld and Big Bang Theory. Those are the kind of things. Let go into sleep. Literally when that comes on, it's telling my body that I'm just about ready for sleep. That's kind of cool. So that's number 3. And that's part of your evening ritual, your letting go ritual. Number 4, stay hydrated. And as you're doing this time change again, always dinners are lighter than our lunch. If you can do that Ayurvedic principle throughout the entire year, that your lunches, and some of you are only doing 2 meals a day, you're doing intermittent fasting or something like that. And so your heavier meal is earlier in the day. It's cooked, it's warm, it takes some digestion, hopefully not too much that you have to go to sleep right after. But hey, if you're retired or you're able to do that and you're going to have a nap in the afternoon, naps actually to accommodate time changes, not too long before 3 o'clock, actually not bad. So, but what you're looking at is also, again, that kind of midday routine. So that when you move into the evening, you're having your lighter dinners, they're not spicy, right? They're not getting in the way of your sleep. So this is really what we're focusing on again, is sleep. So number 5, move your body in the morning. If you can move your body outside, that's even better. So you are moving all the hormones and chemicals and sluggishness. You're just moving it through you. And one of the best ways, again, to manage this time change, and just everyday great advice, I would say. So 5 ways to manage the time change: gradual bedtime adjustments, get that natural morning light, limit evening screen time. And if you can have a hard shutdown, if you can work towards that, game changer, life changer. It has taken me a long time. It's still not 100%. So I want you to call me out. If you're listening to this podcast episode and you get like a message from me past 8 o'clock, or I'm in some group past 8 o'clock, call me out, right? I'm up for it. Not like social media shaming or anything. That's okay too. But because I'm really, really working on this. So I give you total permission. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, staying hydrated, okay, and eating lighter dinners and bigger, earlier meals in the day, and move your body in the morning. So drum roll, please. Out of all of those, everything that we've talked about, what is my number 1 way to manage a time change? Can you guess? And this is for a time change. This is not healthy habits. This is not daily habits. It is, but I'm doing this specific to a time change. Morning sunlight exposure, period. To reset your internal clock, boost your serotonin, which will mean that you're going to be boosting your melatonin before bed, making you fall asleep easier and to have that energy during the day. And so this time right here, as we're chatting at the beginning of March, and even if you're listening to this episode at another transitional time, it's a natural pause for reflection. The transition into spring serves as an opportunity to check in with your goals, your priorities, your habits. What's working, what's not working, what needs adjusting, and what do you want to create this season? What do you want to cultivate this season? It's just a perfect opportunity to ask yourself some of these questions. Okay, so as we breathe together and start to wrap up this episode together, thinking about springing forward with intention. And I actually think back to other episodes where I've talked about the time change. I've talked about and actually had titles like how to survive the time change. I'm like, no, we're not just surviving the time change. It is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reset your habits, to refresh your energy, and align with the season ahead. So as much as I say, oh my gosh, like we need to get rid of these time changes, I'm literally realizing at the end of this podcast episode that is kind of a cool time. Now, I'm just going to let that kind of circulate out there a little bit. But we know right now it's not going away. So absolutely, let's make the best of it and use it for our health and wellness. And so if you enjoyed this episode, if it resonated with you, please subscribe, follow this podcast if you don't already. If you get a chance to leave a review, that would be so awesome. It just gets out there more and it just makes me feel so good. And I know it's not an easy thing to do. So if you have been thinking about that, just reach out to me. I've got a little tutorial on it because, oh my gosh, right? They don't make it easy, but feel free to reach out to me. And absolutely feel free to share this episode with a friend, especially a friend, a family member who you know struggles with time changes. You might be out to lunch over the course of this week and somebody's, saying, oh my gosh, this time change is kicking my butt. Then, hey, do I have a podcast episode for you? That would be awesome. The other thing is, if you haven't had a chance to join my women's wellness community, we're in there. We're live on Friday mornings. We're talking about a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in the podcast. So all you need to do is click on the link in the show notes and ask to join because it is a private group, and I will let you right in. Also, to just let you know that probably starting next week, in next week's episode, I'm going to share a link in the show notes to my member vault, which will hold my spring and summer planner, habit tracker, and self-care journal. I am so excited about this one. It is going to be Create Your Ideal Journal for the spring and summer. So I'll be sharing a link in the notes for that just to keep updated, for you to go into that site to be updated on some of the sheets and the lists that I'm using in the planner. I'm so excited about it. So I'll be sharing that with you in next week's episode. So remember, this is your time. These are your me now years. Every small habit, every mindful choice, and every act of self-care is a step towards thriving in this chapter of your life. So together, let's take a nice, soft, collective breath in. Let's hug our hearts. Exhale. Let love go and let love flow. And until next time, stay strong, stay vibrant, and keep thriving. If you love this episode, I guarantee you're going to love exploring all the amazing opportunities that await us in reclaiming our awesomeness together. So come on over to my Facebook group, women's wellness community for women wanting to rock their me now years, or let's connect over on Instagram at Habit Guru 365 and make the Habit Guru podcast your healthy new habit.